My team used to be way more fun. Back when the grind was simple but still rewarding, and pulling a rare card actually felt special. But over the years, that all changed, slowly transforming what was once a competitive rewarding mode into something that became less about basketball and more about spending. So today, we're going year by year from 2K13 when my team started, all the way to 2K26 to see exactly when it went from an enjoyable grind to one of the most exhausting modes in the entire game.
It will always be about buckets.
To start us off, we have 2K13. My team officially started in 2K13. Back then, the mode wasn't flashy, but everything it had actually mattered. One of the most important features this year was the original player market. That's where you could buy players directly, and their value would go up and down based on how they were playing in real life. So if a player started hooping in real life, his price would rise. But if he started playing like trash, his value could go down as well. But it was kind of like a 2K stock market. You could buy low, wait for the player to start doing well, and then sell high and make a profit. But back then, there was also Road to Playoffs, which was the main online mode for my team in 2K13. If you were able to go 12-0, you were rewarded with getting a 99 Michael Jordan. And that's what made early my team so special, because most rewards were tied to winning and not spending. And legends actually felt rare, so you were constantly running into different lineups. And a lot of people forget this part, but the game actually used to charge you VC to even start up and try and play a game. And the amount was more depending on how good your team was. And that's because every single player had a salary, and the better they were, the more it cost. And everybody has their memories of the cheesy players from back then. Dudes like Robert Pack dunking on everyone, or when people would spam threes with dudes like Del Curry or Craig Hodges. But this year, the most rare card was easily Allen Iverson, simply because he felt impossible to pull. And that leads me to the pack odds. And they were absolutely brutal. Honestly, pretty similar to what we're used to now. But the difference is, the packs only cost around 1,500 to 3,000 VC. So it honestly still felt fair. Plus in 2K13, we had the infamous VC glitch, where you just load in to save games every 15 minutes, and you would get thousands of VC each time. So back then, nobody was really even thinking about spending money, which is crazy to think about now. Overall, 2K13 was the start of a mode that would eventually grow into one of the biggest modes in 2K. Next up, we have 2K14. 2K14 on Next Gen is where my team really started to expand. Domination was the biggest addition. That's where you played against every NBA team, and each game you could get up to 3 stars. And if you were able to get 3 stars, that's when you would get a team pack with a guaranteed player from that team. And after you beat every team, you would face the East and West All-Stars, and then finally a super team stacked with the best players in the game. And if you beat all of them with 3 stars, you basically earned a guaranteed all-star player. And that alone made the grind feel worth it. This year, for online, Road to Playoffs returned, and it was still a lot of fun, and the rewards were pretty solid. But another big thing they added this year, that was the collections. And they're still a huge part of the mode, even in today's games. And this was also the first year that they introduced the collector levels. And if you were somehow able to collect all the cards in the game, that's when you would be rewarded with Diamond Derrick Rose, who was completely broken, but obviously he was also super rare. And this year, the market returned, but this time you couldn't buy players. Instead, it determined the quick sell value of your cards based on their real life performance, which honestly is still a pretty cool idea. And packs, those expanded too. It started out with bronze, silver, and gold, but later on, they also added historic packs, along with cheaper team packs, making collections way easier to complete. This was also the first year that MT was introduced, and back then, it was way easier to make than today's games. So you could still easily build a pretty strong team without even having to spend. Lastly, this year, locker codes were brand new. And back then, the way they worked was actually pretty crazy. They still had the codes that we now know today, where they're good for around a week or so. But they also had locker codes like Diamond Kobe, where they would drop a locker code on Twitter, and they would have limited quantity. So only a certain amount of people would be able to enter the code and actually get him. It felt unfair to some, but it also made those cards super rare. 2K14 wasn't perfect because they still added some bad things like contracts and injury cards, but overall, this was one of the most balanced years of my team. And that brings us to 2K15. 2K15 is where my team got a lot more people hooked. This was the first year that they introduced the auction house, and that alone changed everything. For the first time, players weren't just relying on pack luck or grinding certain modes. You could actually buy and sell cards from other players, which made MT matter way more and added a real economy to my team. And it also had people constantly refreshing, trying to snipe good cards, which added a brand new dynamic to the game mode. And Onyx cards quickly became some of the most popular cards in the game. And a huge reason for that was the Throwback Thursday packs. Every Thursday, new Throwback players drop, and people genuinely looked forward to it. And these weren't just random cards, they were current players and legends from specific years of their career. And honestly, this added a ton of variety. And every game, other than a few cheese players, you were seeing some pretty different lineups. And I mean, they had tons of cool ones. They had MVP D Rose, Lynn Sanity, and even Pau Gasol with long hair on the Grizzlies. On top of that, they kept all the modes people already loved, like Road to Playoffs, Domination, and they brought back collections as well. But now, they all had better rewards. They really gave you endless possibilities. abilities. And that's what made Myteam so special this year. You constantly ran into unique lineups, and that variety made the mode feel fresh all year long. Next up, we have 2K16. For a lot of players, Myteam in 2K16 was one of the best years ever. With the auction house now established, sniping cards became a huge part of the game. People were constantly refreshing, trying to flip cards, and if you were really good at using the market, you could make tons of MT and build a pretty insane team. This year, Amethyst cards were brand new, and they made them some of the best cards in the game. But it got even better because they also gave us moments cards. So if a player went off in real life, they would most likely be getting a moments card. If DeMarcus Cousins dropped 50 points,
It's really ridiculous.
then a moments card could be in packs the next day or later that week. And that system gave us some of the most broken cards ever. Like the moments MVP Steph Curry, a card that was basically impossible to guard because this man could literally pull it from half court. Another cool addition this year was the black market. It was basically an Easter egg in Myteam where you searched all your cards looking for something called runes, and once you had 5, you could type in a code, then the game would glitch out and it gave you access to a secret market with exclusive packs and players. And even though it was super expensive, like Brian Scalabrine being 500,000 MT, it was still a really cool idea. 2K16 also didn't forget about offline players. That's because they added historic domination, letting you play against classic teams instead of just the current ones. For completing the current one, you would get Jason Kidd, and when you beat the historic one, that's when you got Scottie Pippen.
I was 6'7".
And lastly, they added the Gauntlet, a mode that you either loved or hated. It was basically triple threat online with a twist. You would lock in 10 players for 10 games, and then you would choose one player from that group, and the other 2 would be random cards from the entire game, which meant if you got lucky, you could use some of the best players in the game, some that you may never even come close to owning. So that part of it was pretty cool. After each win, you'd get board picks, similar to how Ascension works in today's games, and if you got lucky, you got the featured player. Overall, Myteam in 2K16 gave us a lot of new things, and it was honestly a super fun year for the mode.
But did it come out of your mouth accidentally? Is that what happened?
Yes, man. This is ridiculous, man.
That brings us to 2K17. In 2K17, at its core, the mode was still fun. You still had all the same things that made the mode great, like domination, collections, and the auction house. So the foundation was still there. But 2K wasn't done. Moments cards were back, but now they dropped more often, and this year they also introduced free agent cards. And those are obviously the trial cards that let you use good players for a certain amount of games without actually owning them. They also added dynamic duos, which are still a pretty cool addition, where certain players receive boosts when paired together, like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, or Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. And this year, they changed up online play. Road to Playoffs was now renamed to Myteam Online, and instead of playoff seeds, you now worked your way up through gem tiers, which in my opinion was not that much of an improvement. But they also removed the gauntlet and added Myteam Blacktop. They kept the same reward system where you pick from a board, and rewards, those were improved too. For completing things like domination, instead of being locked into one specific card, you could now choose from multiple amethyst or diamond players. On paper, Myteam in 2K17 was stacked, and it was honestly still really enjoyable. Next up, we have 2K18. In 2K18, 2K continued adding more and more stuff to Myteam. One of the biggest changes was called Supermax, and instead of being able to run the best cards in the game, Supermax introduced a salary cap system. So you had to build lineups with stars and role players, and to be honest, this mode is cool as an optional thing. It shouldn't be your main online mode. And domination, that expanded in a major way too, because they added all-time domination, where you played against all-time teams stacked with the greatest players ever. Probably the most hyped up thing this year, that was their brand new mode called Pack and Playoffs, also known as the draft mode. This mode would let you draft teams, use cards you didn't own, without having to spend VC or MT to get a team started. Like I said, in Myteam, this was one of the most hyped modes 2K added in years, and honestly, it's something some players would still love today. But when they added it in 2K18, the problem wasn't the idea, it was the way it was executed, because it was rarely updated, so the rewards either sucked or were outdated, making the mode feel pointless. And like a lot of things in 2K18, it felt like a great idea that they just got completely wrong. Overall, Myteam in 2K18 had a lot of new things, and it was still okay, but it just didn't live up to the last few years. And that brings us into 2K19. 2K19 did their best to try and make things better. The first big change was the new top tier, Galaxy Opal, and instantly, Opals became the new endgame cards. Online play was also massively improved this year, and that's because they added Myteam Unlimited. Instead of weird formats or having to worry about a salary cap, it went back to what people actually wanted. Go 12-0 and get a crazy reward. And to keep things fresh, they also had Player of the Month cards. So if you could win 12 games in a row, you were getting cards like Pink Diamond Dr. J, and the fact that it changed every month kept it feeling fresh. This year, they also introduced tokens, as well as the token market, and this was a huge addition, because it gave grinders something real to work toward, and you could even earn Galaxy Opals like Wilt Chamberlain and James Worthy for 750 tokens, and that James Worthy this year was insane. And then they introduced one of the biggest modes Myteam has ever had, and that was triple Threat, 3-on-3 fast-paced games that gave you quick rewards. And while the online rewards were tied to a new ball drop system, it was so unpredictable, it kinda just made you want to keep trying. This was also the year heat check cards were added to the game, and every current player had one, and if they went crazy in real life, their card could be on fire with boosted rating. And the idea itself, it was pretty fire. But honestly, 2K wasn't great at keeping up with the rating. So even if a dude was going crazy in real life, usually he still wouldn't even have a boost. So really, these kind of became pointless. So overall, 2K19 had a lot of solid changes, but this year, the grind also started to feel non-stop, because if you stopped playing, it felt like you fell behind a lot quicker than before. And next up, we have 2K20. 2K20 leaned fully into progression, and the biggest change this year was the evolution cards. Instead of replacing your lineup every few weeks, players could now evolve the same card to a higher rating just by playing. And if you remember the starter cards like Derrick Rose, Tracy McGrady, and Vince Carter, they could all grow from Emerald all the way up to a Ruby. So this completely changed how some people played Myteam altogether, and offline modes sounded a lot more appealing. But another major shift this year was position locks. Players were locked to whatever position their card showed, which sounded great at first, but ended up being one of the worst things in the game, simply because 2K started using it as another way to make money, because they added out of position glitched cards. So again, you were at a disadvantage if you didn't buy those packs. But Triple Threat also returned this year and became one of the most played modes in Myteam. And this year, it got even better, especially offline, where you could build a pretty solid team just from winning games and evolving players. Overall, Myteam in 2K20 once again added a ton of new things, and it was still fun, but it almost felt like you had too much to do at this point. That brings us to 2K21. 2K21 is where things started to change a little too much. They made the grind one big system, and that was with the seasons. And you leveled up by earning XP through agendas, and you had to keep up with every single one. And for the first time, Myteam had a battle pass. The only difference was you weren't paying for it yet, but now you at least had a clear goal: hit level 40 before the season ends. But to be honest, keeping up with the agendas was pretty difficult, but if you could keep up, the rewards were pretty solid. And honestly, the thing I hated the most this year, you got no XP for playing online. It was only if you completed the agendas, which to me made absolutely no sense. And this year they also added Myteam Limited, which was basically 2K's version of a weekend league. It only ran Friday through Sunday. After each win, you would choose one of the 3 spaces, and if you got lucky, you got a ring. So it could take you 1 game or it could take you 10. It really just depends on your luck. And each month, if you wanted the best reward, you had to get 5. Another big system they added this year was the exchange. You could now trade in cards and exchange them for packs or players. And the evolution cards, those also changed in a major way. Instead of every single version being the same, you could now choose different upgrade paths. So you could basically decide that player's playstyle. And on top of all of that, 2K gave us more rewards, like the new Ascension boards, which again, if you have good luck, they were solid. Overall, 2K21 Myteam wasn't terrible, but it was getting even harder to keep up, especially with things like the season pass. And next up, we have 2K22. 2K22 pretty much kept the same structure, but at the same time added a bunch of new layers on top of it. Seasons were still the grind, but now they ran on a set timeline, every 6 weeks, and level 40 rewards were still the main goal. This year, they pulled a typical 2K move and brought back the draft mode, acting like it was some brand new feature.
My team's all new draft mode.
Are you sure about that?
But we already saw this in 2K18, so it wasn't new, it just returned. And honestly, by mid-year, most people weren't even touching this. But 2K22 also introduced a fan favorite mode, and that was Clutch Time Online. It was basically fast-paced 5-on-5 games, which was awesome, especially if you're not someone who likes sitting through full games. They also changed Triple Threat Online. Instead of a normal run, you started with 100 points, and every bucket your opponent scored took away points. It was honestly a dumb change that wasn't even needed. Then you had the grading system and the holo cards. All year, you were chasing these stupid holo versions, mostly for agendas, just so you can get some more XP. And it honestly just felt like another way to push people towards opening packs. But the graded versions of cards, those were actually kind of cool, because they gave MT bonuses, and on top of that, they made your cards more rare. Overall, 2K22 was still playable, but it's crazy to see just how much this mode has changed from 2K13. And that brings us into 2K23. 2K23 took everything from past years and made everything more of a grind. The best change this year was definitely contracts being removed, which meant no more annoying contract screens popping up right as you're trying to play a game. But outside of that, almost everything else became more of a grind. They added triple threat co-op, letting you play online 3-on-3 with friends. Clutch time also expanded, adding a single player mode, which gave offline players another mode to grind. They also introduced exhibitions, where you could send unused cards on missions while they weren't playing to earn rewards. I never really saw the point of this, and honestly I think it's pretty stupid. The thing that made the grind so massive this year, Domination expanded into 5 different tiers, turning what has always been a cornerstone mode into a never-ending grind. And for a lot of players at this point, Domination just stopped feeling worth it, because by the time you were done completing it, the cards were already outdated. The one thing that got me and a lot of other players this year was the trophy case, because it had a lot of cool players that you can get, and overall, it was a pretty good idea. There was always something to do, but it was now damn near impossible to keep up, especially if you planned on going outside. Overall, 2K23 MyTeam had tons of content, but it was honestly overwhelming at this point. Next up, we have 2K24. 2K24 was the turning point year, and not in a good way, because this was the year a lot of players finally checked out, because it felt like 2K turned on all the fans who love MyTeam. This was the first year that they introduced the paid Pro Pass. So now if you couldn't keep up with the weekly agendas and you fell behind with getting to level 40, you now had the option to just buy the levels and skip the grind entirely, which was clearly another way for them to make money. And on top of that, pack odds were still awful, but it just felt like they were getting worse. And the mode was honestly the most overwhelming it's ever been. And what they did next, that was the last straw for me and many other players. And that was when they removed the auction house, which at that point was a staple of MyTeam. And it's one of those things that once you add it to the game, it's almost non-removable, because you forget how to play the mode without having the auction house there. And they didn't even hide their greed, because instead they added the player market back. Except this wasn't the one that I told you about earlier. This one, you had to buy players at 2K's fixed prices, which of course were way overpriced, and if you wanted to complete a lot of the collections, you had to anyway. So all the years that they spent making good changes and building up the mode, they completely killed all of that with these few changes. And what makes this even worse, 2K didn't even stop there. They completely scammed players who spent the entire year grinding to unlock the promised Dark Matter Kobe Bryant. And that was for collecting every card in the game, which if you've ever played MyTeam, takes almost a whole year. And just days before people were about to earn him, 2K lost the rights to Kobe and removed him from the game. And there was no proper replacement. They just pulled him from the game and completely screwed the players who have been playing the mode all year long to get the reward that the game promised. And for a lot of players, that moment ruined MyTeam altogether for them, because it showed 2K no longer cared about the grind or the time you invested in their game. The only thing that mattered to them was the profits. And that brings us to 2K25. 2K25 pushed MyTeam even further away from what it used to be. Instead of feeling like a card collecting basketball mode, it honestly started feeling like Park, but with MyTeam cards. And I mean, they literally added rep to MyTeam. Let that sink in for a second. A mode that used to be about building your dream team and collecting cards now has a rep system, and with it, another endless grind. They added new modes like Breakout, but honestly, this mode is so hard to even get into anymore. And most of the time I do load into it, it's because I clicked A too fast trying to load into my player. It's just reached a point where MyTeam feels so overwhelming that it made you just want to close the app before you even started, and the grind just doesn't feel worth it. And on top of that, the pack odds got worse than they ever were before, to the point where people have to pull thousands of dollars worth of packs just to get the cards that they want. And if you want to stay competitive, you got to be ready to do that on a regular basis. So instead of fixing the mode, they leaned harder into the stuff that keeps people spending. And for a lot of longtime players, 2K25 was the year that they knew for sure the MyTeam that they once loved was completely gone. Then we have the current game, 2K26. By 2K26, it's obvious what MyTeam is really about now. It's about finding ways to keep you spending, and the mode isn't even a shell of what it once was. There's still a player base, but it's significantly smaller than what it once was. And honestly, the mode altogether just feels like a complete waste of time now. The grind is longer than ever, the rewards are worse than ever, and like I said, the pack odds are so bad that you have to spend thousands just to have a competitive team year round. And instead of fixing the core issues, 2K keeps finding new ways to monetize everything. A good example of that is them adding the fan favorite all-star team up back to the game, but putting it in MyTeam so they could try and make some type of profit from the mode. And that pretty much sums up what MyTeam has become. They take something people love and just turn it into another way to extract money. We have to remember, this was once a mode that was so big and popular that it helped some of the biggest content creators in the 2K community, like Cash Nasty and Jesser, just to name a couple. And what used to be a yearly tradition for a lot of players has slowly become a mode that just gets ignored. And that is MyTeam from 2K13, when it was simple and fun, to 2K26, where it's complicated and expensive. What year do you guys think MyTeam stopped being fun? Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite year was and when you thought it got bad. As always, thank you for watching, and other than that, I just hope all of you
Stay saucy.
Ever since I can remember, I've been popping my collar,